Hello, everybody. It looks like I've been tearing my hair out, doesn't it? Possibly.
No,
Possibly. No,
no,
thank
no, you
you.
look
Because you're
good.
still
You look good.
there. Yeah.
Still there. Hey, you got to count your blessings.
And you're still wearing your Seahawks. Like, I don't know. I think that reminds me. I think Chris Richard used to wear that on a sideline.
Might have,
It
yeah.
was similar with the logo down there. And maybe Gus Bradley. Possibly.
Could be, could be. Matty, preamble, right?
Mm.
So the root word being amble,
Yeah.
but that means to like walk, to ambulate, to amble is to walk with your feet. But then
Have a stroll.
preamble, that would then, the suffix pre would mean before, so before the walk. But in this context, it's like a discussion or a chunk of text before a main body, right, of text.
Yes, I'm still with you.
So is the word preamble more metaphorical or figurative? Because it's like you're taking a walk with the author. This is before the walk with the author type of thing. Because literally, it's not very. Are we
Metal
echoing
Dragon, you
that?
can hear an echo. Metal Dragon, this is a big moment for you here because if no one else can hear an echo, Metal Dragon, you know what I want to do right now.
Maddie, you need to. Just because the Seahawks lost doesn't mean you need to take it out on the chat.
Metal Dragon from who? Griffin or me?
It's
Let's identify the issue.
it's probably me.
Oh, Metal Dragon, this is bad.
Hmm.
This is really bad, Metal Dragon.
I have echo cancellation on, so
You sound great. I probably sound like. Oh.
uh-oh.
David supporting Metal Dragon. We might have to. I thought you sounded
Question
good, Griff.
question for the people that are hearing echoes, are you guys wearing headsets? Maybe I'll pull the mic away. All right. Well,
Oh, well, reverb. Why didn't you use those terms, David? Metal Dragon,
okay.
Ben.
If it becomes too much, I'll take the headset off, folks.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Listen to Brandon. Blame yourself, Maddie. Put
Brandon. Don't
yourself.
test me. Don't test me. I'm feeling really itchy today. You know,
Mm.
I'm just ripe for a banning of someone else.
All right.
Sorry, I ruined your preamble of an amble.
No. I just wonder why we use that word.
We.
One.
It was kind of a you thing. It was one of your bits which is stuck.
Yeah, I started it, but you dubbed it. I didn't use the word preamble. You did.
Nah. True.
Yeah. So really, it's your fault.
A lot of things are my fault.
Um,
What isn't my fault is the Seahawks run defense.
it is your fault for pointing it out, though, because people don't always like that when you point it out.
No, well,
And
yeah.
you do so constructively because you were trying to manage expectations headed into the season. This is something that has followed them from Baltimore. So, but before we get into that,
I just want Mike Macdonald to call the good run defense and good pass defense plays.
he's got the calls, maybe.
Does he?
I mean, I think so. He just doesn't want to live in it because he doesn't want to have to structure all of his defense around like off of that. You know what I mean? Because
I
he
don't
still has
know.
other stuff. It's
I
a
don't know.
philosophical choice, and we'll get into that next on Seattle Overload. Hit it, Matty. Intros are my passion.
Why does everything disappear on this thing all the time? I'm having a bad day. Oh, hold on.
And Matty
Hold
hit
on.
it.
Seamless. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where the Seahawks have lost their third straight game at home. They've fallen to 4-4 on the season, so 500 record. They're still joint first place in the NFC West, but this was a 31-10 battering by the Buffalo Bills at home, which was massively disappointing, Griff. I don't really know where to start because they got outplayed in pretty much every aspect of the game. They did some sloppy stuff. They did some flat-out bad stuff. I think it's not all on the players. It's also on the coaches. It's not all on one individual. It's on everyone involved with the Seattle Seahawks. The fact you're typing this early into the podcast shows that the fan base on the app, twitter.com, formerly known as, is not taking things very well. And I think that's understandable. If I had paid good money to go and watch that at Lumen Field, particularly when I was sold kind of a vision of a new era where things might be different and this is so we can compete and this is so we can win a playoff game. Yes, you need patience in the first year of a head coach, but I'd be pretty peeved, particularly when most of the stadium appeared to be Buffalo Bills fans who had bought tickets from season ticket holders.
See, I never bought into the idea that they greatly upgraded, generally speaking, but that had very little to do with what I thought of Mike and Grubb and everyone. It had more to do with the premise that feeds that statement. The premise being that the existing staff or the previous staff was like horrific. Now, elements of the staff was maybe, but all in all, my premise was that the previous staff was more successful than not. You're still talking about back-to-back winning seasons. So it's not so easy. It's just not a snap of the fingers to come in and improve on that right away. So this immediate success, or rather immediate large-scale improvement, was never, ever a given, no matter how good of a coaching staff you bring in. Forget about Mike Macdonald, just whoever you brought in, it was never a given that they were going to get off the ground and hit and just be something worlds better, because as a rule, it's difficult to be worlds better than an already winning program. That's hard to do. So my Jets were always cool heading into this season. Still, though, they are bad in frustrating ways. Mm-hmm. There are some cool elements to the team, no doubt. I don't want to lose sight of that, because as they improve, if they improve the bad things, those good things will be waiting for them on the other side still, and they can combine and multiply. Right. But getting down to the root cause of why they are so bad in the areas that they are so bad is really where my mind goes. And I don't think it's an easy answer, but I've got some thoughts, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, maybe we should approach this slightly differently, because it was so disappointing as a whole. Maybe rather than getting into the nitty-gritty, which we will do, because there's some key topics if you go one stage down from an overall issue thing and a real macro thing. One stage down, there's subsections to that, and then there's real stuff we can hone in on. So let's start broad, and let's look at, I think, a big problem just overall is that they are not able to play football. They're not able to run the football effectively and be balanced on offense. At a similar time, they are very, very much failing to be balanced on defense. And before we kind of go into those subsections, I think it's, and we were speaking about this before we came on air, but Mike Macdonald is a first-time head coach, as we all are familiar with. He's trying to install a completely new defensive system to a virtually completely new defensive coaching staff. He's hired an offensive coaching staff who is totally new to the NFL, and offensive coordinator, no line coach, and a lot of whom have not worked together either, other than that duo, that partnership. And it comes off to me like the offensive staff is very much behind certain things, but also the head coach has all of this stuff on his plate, and he's still calling the defensive plays as well. And I think we are somewhat historians on the podcast, and history can be insightful. And it took Pete Carroll so damn long to work things out of how they work in the NFL. And yes, Mike Macdonald has, or just in football in general, and his philosophy. And he spoke about almost like a eureka moment after he got fired by the New England Patriots, and he was pissed about that. And then he went to USC with his philosophy, and he dominated, and the rest is history. Well, obviously Sean McVay and what he did with the Rams, and having Wade Phillips, like McDonald has Leslie Frazier, as like a veteran guy in the building, it is a big help. That is a big help. But McVay kind of made it look easy. But he is actually more the exception than the anomaly. He that doesn't make sense. He's more of the exception than the rule. And I'm not saying he's an anomaly. I'm saying, Mike Macdonald can certainly be that, but it's very difficult right now, and it might take him some time to work that out. And right now, it looks like it's going to, because I wouldn't say talent necessarily is Seattle's biggest issue. Like, the issues in Week 8 seem very similar to the issues in Week 1, just starting 3-0 and winning fairly easily in each game, despite the struggles, kind of glossed over said issues, but they never really fixed them. And ultimately, the biggest issue for me, Griff, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but it is just that a lot of sloppy details, which and just poor football balance. Like, there is no real, I don't want to say no identity, but because that's what happens whenever there's lack of results, but there does feel like a lack of cohesive, complementary football or joined up thinking, and it is looking like a complete mess. So
yeah, I mean, there are problems on the details front, and then there are problems on what you referred to as the balance front, and balance is going to be a reference to larger macro scale things. So really, it's to say there are problems everywhere. But when you go about fixing a problem, you can only start in one area, right? You can only do one thing at a time, right? So where do you start, really? And I mean, you talk about no identity, and of course that's a nebulous term, right? What does it really mean? And that's a word that gets thrown around usually when results are bad. Has there ever been good results and someone said, man, what's the identity of this team? And that never happens. So really, I think we not that identity isn't real, but I think we do conflate being good with having an identity and being bad with not having one. Some teams have a clear identity and they're bad. That doesn't mean the identity is bad necessarily, But for me though,
well, like Dan Campbell's Lions, Griff, I'm pretty sure they had a rough first year, right? But they were scrappy, like by record. But they were scrappy. They had a clear identity,
absolutely.
And everyone was like, "This isn't working." And then, well, they weren't like, "This isn't what." They were skeptical, and it did work very clearly.
Mm-hmm. Right, and they stuck to that. Remember, like Pete Carroll, and really, I'm quoting Pete here, but really, I'm quoting John Wooden, Coach Wooden. It's about you have to have your philosophy and stick to it through good times and bad times. Now, that doesn't mean being stubborn about not adapting the details of your program. Sometimes your philosophy can be always adapting, right? So you can kind of, that's your cop out there. But when as it relates to identity in a more specific sense, when you are play calling so as to stop the bleeding, that means you're living in stuff because your core structure isn't working at all, then you don't have an identity. Like, that's not you at this point. You're a reactionary play caller. I think maybe when you have to be a reactionary play caller, you have no identity, because that means your core stuff, your intentions aren't working. Sometimes play callers will have to resort to some things and it works, but that's really not what they want to be, because they probably think that's not sustainable. It's just a Band-Aid, right? So you have to go about fixing the core of the team. But in this case, so let's just say on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think Grubb has had really intentions about what he cohesively wants to be. I think it's been more, man, I got a bag full of really cool ideas and I just want to throw them out and see them on the screen, see them out on the field. and see what happens. But yeah, it really feels like there's been a severe lack of how it all fits in together. And we kind of saw it. We kind of saw the beginning of that vision again in that 49ers game where they ran the ball a little bit more. And that was just for the purpose of getting looks out on the field so that defenses have to respect those looks regardless of what actually happens post snap. But living in formations that impose a variety of things on the defense that the other formations and the tendencies that follow did not impose. So we kind of saw, I thought we saw a mixed bag of processes and results against the 49ers. I think we saw a much better picture against the Falcons. Granted, the Falcons are a bad defense. This game, again, as we always say, we'll see what the tape shows. But I thought there was, again, a modicum of process, but then the results did not follow at all. There are the caveats with the turnovers in the red zone, right? But that's where you start to think about the details. Like, they're not I don't think they're a well-coached offense. Elements of the scheme are good. I think Grubb is trying to figure out the balance, but I don't see them well-coached in the details. Now, a large percentage of it is, you just don't have the talent on the O-line. Laken Tomlinson, the right guard situation, the right tackle situation is just bad. It's just bad. But even from there, the things that are theoretically in the player's control, they don't seem to do well in. At that point, you have to think, how are they being coached? What's the coaching emphasis? And a lot of that applies to the other side of the ball as well. But I don't know, Matty, what are your thoughts on that, or where do you want to take it?
Well, as usual, you've touched on a lot of things there which are really interesting, I think, with the offense. So just, again, thinking about it from that broad point, and then we'll get into this game. Well, I'll get into this game with my answer, depending on when you want to interrupt and interject. Macdonald came in from a Baltimore, I tweeted about this because it's fascinating to me, and I spoke about it before, but he came in from a Baltimore system that for years had been physical and run the heck out the football. They'd done it to the point that Greg Roman had become maligned among the fan base because he had sort of so-called basic route concepts, but they had heavy personnel. They'd have Kyle Juszczyk at one point in time, and then another fullback who I can't remember right now, but they got big and they ran the heck out of the football. Harbaugh did that back, of course, with the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick. They weren't balanced. They were a run-heavy team. Even in Baltimore, they're a run-heavy team. He also worked at Michigan under... he also worked in Baltimore under John Harbaugh, of course. So the Harbaugh brothers love physical football and running the football. And Mike Macdonald gets hired as the Seahawks head coach, and he says, we want to be physical on both sides of the football, which is a buzzword. But at the same time, the first thing you think of when you hear physical football is not gun, drop back, pass heavy offense, where we're dropping back so many times a game and we're spreading you out and we're dinking and dunking and we're getting explosive at certain times. You think about running the football, maybe getting heavier personnel on the field. You don't think about spread formations. You don't think about 3 wide receivers all the time. Now, obviously, what appealed to Macdonald about Grubb would have been the fact that at Washington, he had 3 really talented receivers, and he managed to run a fairly small amount of concepts, but they were very well suited to his quarterback, and he dressed them up in enough ways to stay incredibly productive throughout a college football season. That is very much like what what Macdonald does on his defense. Small amount of concepts, dressed up a variety of ways, multiplicity, suited to his players. So you can see that link, but the lack of physicality thing, I was always like, maybe. I mean, we spent ages in the offseason thinking, well, what about the Fresno State years? Because they did run the ball a bit more there, and he has got an offensive line coach in the building, and maybe they will be a bit more physical. And this run game looks pretty damn diverse in the preseason. It looks exciting, but suddenly when the real games start, it kind of diverts into being spread, pass heavy, lack of a run game, lack of kind of a willingness to run the football. And Tom Brady in this broadcast was kind of going in on Grubb, like as much as a a color commentator can do who's like done one Seattle game in a season. But he's clearly, studied the Seahawks. And after Geno Smith's interception from the on the running back screen, Brady said that's the problem with being in the shotgun and allowing them to tee off all day, just bad football from the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Well, I actually thought this game, Seattle, was more formationally diverse. They sprinkled in pistol for the first time in the regular season, which we saw in the preseason. They sprinkled in a bit more under center. They've been trying to get under center run game and play action working. My concern is it feels afterthought is too harsh, but it feels like an emergency, like, oh crap measure where they're playing catch up now. They've come in, I don't know what, maybe the intention was we can sling it around the yard 60 times a game, or maybe that was kind of Grubb revert. It didn't match what we'd seen in the preseason, so maybe It was Grubb going, hey, we'll just call the hits, this is what's working, this is the only way we can move the balls in. No huddle, really, like up-tempo or tempo stuff. But whatever the truth with that part of it, it's an offense playing behind from where they should be, like schematically. And then there's other things which I don't know if you can put it all. You can't put it all on one person or one position group. But I, before this game, had serious concerns. One, about the formation stuff, because like last week, and I thought this week the pass protection was pretty solid, but I thought last week the play action pass pro was abysmal. And why is it abysmal? Well, it's not just because the offensive line sucks. It's suffered all season in under center play action pass protection because they don't run much under center generally.
It's a good point.
And two, they definitely don't do much under center running the ball because they don't run the ball much anyway. So when a defense sees it, they're just like, your under center pass pro becomes really hard because they're just jetting up the field on you, and you're trying to sell run first, and it's just a disaster.
They don't respect the sell, as you're saying. So even if you want to live in this gun world, the shotgun world, it's not as though you still can't be very formationally diverse and tendency diverse. And like you were saying, they're trying to do that a little bit, but like. You know who's really good at instituting balance into a gun-based offense? Chip Kelly. There are so many permutations to the same looks that he puts out there. He is not afraid to run the ball 30 times from shotgun in the game. He's just got all this stuff. And what that allows him to do, allows him to use 7-man pro shotgun play action, right? Where it's like 2-3-man routes downfield. Mm-hmm. You can get into your drop back game. Whatever the defense presents, you have a run beater in your back pocket. If you're going to live in that gun world, why invest so much into a 5-step, 7-step drop back offense, given your personnel, when you probably need to invest more into having more multiplicity in your run game and being able to play action in a variety of ways out of shotgun? Obviously, the reason why teams don't typically do that is because it's harder because the back is to your side and they can kind of tell which direction you're going to run what, right? Mm-hmm. And that what limits your run game limits your play action game. But if you spend that much time in shotgun, there are still means and modes of resolving that kind of lack of built-in multiplicity. You just have to invest more and more time in it. Mm-hmm. He's a coach that likes to spend a lot of time in shotgun. So you have to have those complements, I think. If you're not going to institute those complements, then you need to be a normal NFL offensive coordinator. You need to ditch the college overarching philosophy. And that means, like you're saying, you got to spend at least 35% of your early down snaps in under center. You gotta spend 50, if not, maybe cut that down a little bit and replace it with like 15% pistol. And then, you can shift out of pistol into gun and get into your drop back stuff and vice versa. And like he uses motion and shifts and stuff to manipulate individual defenders, but I don't think he does it to manipulate the entire structure of the defense. Mm-hmm. Waldron used a lot of pistol, and that I'm bringing that up. That's an example of how using pistol to bridge your shotgun under center worlds can be weaponized against the defense trying to defend shotgun. Oh, we're trying to defend shotgun. They're in pistol now. Now we're not really built to defend the menu of things that could come out of pistol right now. okay, they're in 12 personnel under center. We're trying to defend 12 personnel under center. Now they're in 3-by-2 empty. And now we have to defend gun drop back game. We're not really built for that. And that's why their gun drop back game at 12 personnel was elite last year and the year before. So that's where the balance and the structure comes in. And we mentioned it last week, but when Pete Carroll would ruminate sometimes, when he'd use these words, we would just kind of roll our eyes at sometimes. When he'd talk about balance, when he'd talk about how things have to, quote unquote, intricately fit together, and he'd talk about our stuff, we have to nail down our formula and stuff. While that's just like coach speak, he means very concrete things in his head that he's just choosing not to communicate. And for me, like this season is a lesson in not taking how he structured his offense or whatever role he had as a non-play calling head coach for the offense, whatever role he had, it was an important role. The relationship, again, we have no idea what they talk about behind closed doors, but that feedback loop between Grubb and Macdonald, I know they're trying to fix it and work through it, but so far, like it's not a given. Like it wasn't a given that they were going to the gates were going to open and just the floodgates would the floods would pour out, right? It's there's a lot of like them having to figure this out on the job, and they simply are not going to be the coaching staff on all sides that we wanted them to be probably until year 2 or year 3. So
that was going a bit broader again, but I like that. I think that's really important to state, and I think that's stuff which Macdonald may need to work out. Well, does need to work out, I think, as a head coach, and that kind of balance. And maybe you could also point to Leslie Frazier maybe needing to, if he's going to be the guy who's seeing around corners. We don't know this. He may well be doing a lot of this, but he possibly might need to be more involved with the offense too. He's focused only on the defense. They might have been so obsessed with trying to get the defensive system in that they kind of lost sight of the offense and were like, Grubb and Huff can handle that. That's their system. They've been running it for years. Well, yes, but they've also got to clearly adjust. And that kind of brings me to Scott Huff as an offensive line coach. And last week, we spent ages on the run defense in the tape podcast for obvious reasons, as you've just seen. But the run offense, now, part of this, I think, comes down to the play caller, as in, you're good at what you do, right? Hopefully. And they don't do much running, so offensive line-wise, they haven't had time to get good at it. This game, they tried 17 rush attempts at a 1.9 yards per carry average. So they tried to run the ball a bit more, again, like they did last week too, but they weren't able to do it. Mm-hmm. And as Mike Macdonald said afterwards, they got in throw mode too early yet again, which keeps happening. But they did. There was an effort to run the ball a bit more. And, again, they're kind of behind the 8 ball. They're playing catch-up in the run game because they hadn't done it for so long. I think that's part of it. But also, as I was saying about the tape episode, I wanted to look at some of the Seahawks run game stuff because, we looked at it in previous weeks. The chemistry up front, like the way that the combinations are being taught, just the understanding between the offensive line players, that speaks to me of however they're preparing their run game or however they're coaching it or just executing it on the day. But, that comes down to your preparation. It's just off. Like, there's too many, it's not it is assignment mistakes in the run game, which are just, it's not being out-talented. It's like a details thing that tanks the run game. Like, Ken Walker having a massive yards per carry compared to Zach Charbonnet, he's not getting loads better blocking. Walker's just a special back who's so creative and he can make a first guy miss. And yeah, Charbonnet's not playing his best football, that's for sure. But I think a lot of backs would struggle in what the offensive line is doing. But I don't want to blame that on the offensive line necessarily. I don't think they're bad at run blocking per se. I think
they really have quality run blocker.
Right, that's the whole premise of how they've been built by. That's what John Schneider always perceives as his value. Like, he's getting better run blockers and strength at the expense of potentially lesser pass protection. So, yeah. So I just wanted to mention that on Scott Huff because, he is the O-line coach, and it's not that I can kind of empathize with Grubbin to a certain extent because he's trying to.
Well,
there's a lot of issues,
so
and he's trying to call the good plays, and the run game is not there.
When you talk about the coaching details, the other side of this is when your structure leaves a lot to be desired. What's one of the symptoms of that? You become predictable. So that also dampens whatever advantages any given design of a play call also has, because the defense can cheat to the play because they understand what likely is going to happen. They become predictable when you become siloed.
Yeah.
People thought last year's offense was siloed and lacked sequence. This, and maybe it did to an extent, which I partially agree with. I partially disagree. But this offense right now, frankly, is predictable because of how it boxes itself in to modes of offense that don't really relate to one another. And the pre-snap misdirection only goes so far in trying to spring certain guys open or certain angles in the run game. It has to be more like broad spectrum stuff. And again, I'm going in circles. It's just a matter of got to be willing to live in more different formations and do more stuff within those formations. But like right now, the Seahawks and EPA are the 17th ranked offense through 8 games. Last year on the whole of the season, they were 10th. So they are a worse offense in 2024 than they were in 2023. Like they're worse. Yeah. They have regressed. They have not improved.
Yeah.
Blame whoever you want, blame whatever you want, but the product is worse. They've gotten worse from last year.
Right, and their time of possession's only 21 minutes 57 seconds, and they weren't able to really possess the football or drive the football outside of those kind of hurry up spots. Now, there's a few other things to talk about the offense. I see Brandon in the chat saying, is it fair to be very low on Huff Grubb, even though the offensive line is poor? The performance is starting to feel like it has a lot to do with what's being asked of them. I think we kind of answered that, Brandon. I think there's ways they could help the offensive line. I mean, this game, maybe we'll look back and see it, but I felt, the 49ers game, we didn't speak about it much, but, leaving tackles on islands, not sliding protection in a certain way to help guys out. It's very nitpicky when you highlight individual plays, but they're asking a load of their offensive line and pass pro just to drop back in 5-man pass pro so often. And this game, they did actually, trot out that 2-back look where they had 7 guys in and chip protection on 3rd and very longs. That's one option, but as we've said, with the whole Grubb, just the design of the offense and the plays and the formations he's calling in, it is like he wants to have chocolate cake 5 times a day, every day of the week, rather than sprinkling in a balanced diet. So yeah, right, Griff. Let's dive a bit more into this specific game for the offense, right? So it was going okay. I think what's disappointing about the game is it felt like just a weird ass Seahawks game, which we thought may have. Well, I don't know if we thought that, but some may have left with the old regime. But apparently, the Seahawks are still completely weird. Where Josh Allen fumbles it twice in the first half. They get lucky bounces. The Seahawks manage, after going 3 and out on consecutive drives, to open the game. They have a 13-play drive, which ends in a field goal. Only really ends in a field goal because at 2nd and goal at Buffalo's 3-yard line, Connor Williams fumbles the ball snaps it over Geno Smith's head, and Walker manages to recover, so they kick the field goal. Then, on 4th and goal at Buffalo's 1, Geno Smith trips over Connor Williams, and Tom Brady has an interesting comment about how he used to stagger his feet more in those situations on the center at the goal line. It was interesting Geno didn't do that. So, but at that point, Griff, were you feeling okay about the offense? Like, it seemed that they found something, even if it was the no huddle stuff we'd seen in previous
if you
situations.
if you at least get a field goal in those drives, it's still a one-score game. There's a reality where it's a tie game at halftime, and which is then indicative of the offense was able to at least move the ball to be in scoring position, and that is a sign of a functioning offense. But because the score becomes what it is, you kind of have to abandon your game plan, and you have to be playing catch-up mode in the second half and be more pass heavy in the second half. And the O-line is not built to accommodate that mode of play, barring, like the hero game-winning drive, with the hurry up and stuff. And Grubb did try to run a hurry up to try to inject some juice in there, or rather no huddle. But so yeah, I mean, you play this game over 9 more times, and at least 4 of those, the offense registers a strong day across the board, I think, because like I just said, like there was room for the offense to play better this game. Like it was within their grasp, that said. But yeah, I'd like to know what was going on with Lockett. Was he not getting open? Was he open and Geno missed him? Was he open and the O-line didn't let Geno get to him? I wonder about those
He
things.
had the same role in the offense as he's always had, and they just gave Bobo the DK stuff, but didn't look that way and started looking for JSN.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Need to see that. But yeah, anyway, the second half happened. Obviously, we'll get to the defense, but they're 17-3 down after the Bills have a scoring drive on their opening drive of that second half, and then the pick. So I think the pick, it's easy to overreact to individual plays, but Brady's saying about them dropping back in the shotgun all the time. The pick brings up for me a fear that there's a sort of the current issues, right, about being siloed, like having a very specific buckets of plays and formations, and maybe lacking variety. That is that becomes a bigger problem when teams start dialing into your tendencies, because you have less ways of, you just have less stuff. So
Right.
I don't want to overreact to an individual play, but I do think it becomes harder for Seattle because they're trying to catch up to the things they're bad at and that they need, while at the same time they have certain hits that are going to get removed. And then it's like, what are you good at all? And
Right.
that play, they seem to be very dialed into that happening. That kind of ended the game, though, didn't it? Because then the Bills go and score a touchdown, and it's 24-3. Good night. But yeah, I don't know. Anything else on the offense, Griff? It's disappointing. They went 3 and out when they're 24-3 down. They then put together a touchdown drive where Geno showed some of his best stuff, or what he can do. I guess I'd like to say that the O-line was good in pass pro. Like, I haven't seen the pressure numbers. That could age badly when I watch it back, but it felt like Geno had plenty time and benefited a bit more from just the attempt at balance and a bit more formational diversity. You just got those 2 Connor Williams slash half on Geno, maybe the stepped on play would stick in the mind.
I feel like I saw Geno bailing the pocket, not bailing the pocket, but escaping a losing pocket more often. I'll have to really rewatch the game to internalize all that.
I was a bit more worried about like lack of downfield separation.
He was checking the ball down a lot, wasn't he?
Yeah. Whereas I guess maybe one-on-ones with DK would get hit, but that's something on tape. Like maybe we'll see it this tape as well. But on the All-22, the receiver spacing and some of the route distribution is, again, speaks to sloppy details, however it's been coached. And a lot of this isn't the OC. Like, the OC has the plays, but the coaching and the transferring of the details, that's positional coaches.
Right.
Which, again, is a completely, other than O-line coach and play caller, they're completely new to each other. So it's a big challenge. That's why this whole thing was so ambitious. You've got...
Yep.
Because when McVay went to the Rams, Phillips had been there for a bit, right? Wade Phillips?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
No, of course not. That's stupid. Sorry, that's stupid. I was trying to cope there. That was
Yeah,
really thick.
but I do wonder how many assistants he brought from him from Washington.
Right, like guys, yeah, that would be something to look at. He's at Washington.
Yeah, he was Jay
Oh,
Gruden's offensive.
McVay was
Yeah,
not Wade Phillips. Yeah,
yeah, he was Jay Gruden's non-play calling offensive coordinator.
and I wonder how many guys Wade Phillips brought with him.
Right.
Probably like all of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, interesting. Right. So, chat, if you got any questions on the offense, we didn't get as many on them. It's more kind of broad stuff, but please do ask them. That's the question from Carl here. How much of this are we just blaming on bad weather and bad luck? Inside the 3-yard line twice and didn't score. A couple of Josh Allen fumbles that we didn't recover. Could have been a different game. I think we kind of answered that, but yeah, that's part of it.
If you're a believer in the butterfly effect, yeah, I mean, you at least get a different game state in the second half if those fluky turnovers don't happen in the first half, or not turnovers, but like the red zone fiasco. You at minimum get a very different game state in the second half. You enter quarter 3 with it being a 1-score game.
Mm-hmm.
That would change the game. Yeah, for sure. So,
space outization. Even though talent-wise the O-line and quarterback may just be okay, is it also an incompatibility in personnel, play skill / style? I think you could say about the O-line that they're kind of incompatible with what they're being asked to do, and most O-lines in the NFL would be, like generally. But I think, the fact that they're trying this speaks to the belief they have in the skill set of Geno Smith and then the receiver group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah, we haven't talked about DK Metcalf. So DK Metcalf didn't play. His asking price, his leverage for new contract negotiations probably benefits from this, Griff.
Yeah, I like seeing DK and Geno, or DK trying to not console necessarily, but encourage Geno on the sideline. That makes you feel good about their relationship if there was any sort of concern there, because we know they've had
right, because it sometimes looks a bit weird at times. But
I think that's one of those relationships where they can have friction and be okay, because they're just competitive. Like they kind of speak each other's language,
yeah,
in that sense. So I'm not worried about it. Probably the same goes for Reed and Derek Hall. Like I'm not like those two guys they play with their hair on fire. So I think they're probably, that's another case of guys understanding each other,
So
defense
Griff,
though.
Well, Griff, firstly, how we haven't really spoke about it too much. Like, how concerned are you about Geno Smith? Because this is now back-to-back games where, like, statistically it's down, but also, there's, another interception. There's also him throwing the football at a defender in frustration and petulance, really, which as a quarterback you don't want to see. Like, would a different quarterback have done more in this spot?
I don't really.
Like with 32 rushing yards.
I'm not worried about Geno. He's taking care of his side of it, but and then in some cases he absolutely, the play here and there where you want better quarterback play, but it's the offense, regardless, forget about what the names are on the back of the jersey. The offense needs to create conditions to allow players to be able to play from a position of strength instead of constantly being in catch-up. And I don't just mean catch-up in terms of what the score is. You can't be in catch-up with regard to, like, you can't always be at a conditional disadvantage with regard to like skill sets on the field and what the down and distances and the defense knowing what you're going to do. Then you're playing with like ankle weights on. Like, take off the ankle weights. I would rather evaluate players when they don't have the ankle weights on and they can play from a position of strength, and they don't have that right now. Geno is the only reason why the ball gets moved in this offense. And he knows it. He knows it and he won't say it. So when you see him what looks like pouting, that's him knowing that he's getting jobbed. he's don't take the scoring drives in this game for granted, because a worse quarterback, you come out with 3 points this game. He's, in my mind, still a top 10 quarterback, probably 8, 9, or 10, and he's being failed. This is a case where, I mean, look at CJ Stroud in Houston right now. We're complaining about a 17th ranked offense in EPA. CJ Stroud, if you isolate him, is playing damn near out of his mind, and the Texans offense is ranked 20th. So, and remember, Bobby Slovic was on some people's short list for being the Seahawks head coach. So just to put that in perspective, like, a lot of things need to go right. I don't think it's a matter of we need better this, we need better that. There's just a lack of cohesion, and that it starts somewhere, but ultimately, like, once you get going, then each component of this whole picture, players, coaching staff, whatever, can improve. But it's, again, like sports, especially if a game like football where there's so many intricate systems, you rarely are ever as good as the sum of your parts. It's always either a positive feedback loop or a negative feedback loop. And right now there's a negative feedback loop. So instead of, releasing our ire at the results and the symptoms that a negative feedback loop causes, let's see the underlying issues fix itself, and then let's evaluate the players. And I know it's like, again, what am I really talking about? Hell, I don't even know what I'm really talking about here, but really, we need to see a more balanced offense and better performing offensive line. We're not asking for a top 10 O-line. We're asking for the 22nd ranked O-line. We're asking for the 20th ranked O-line. We're not, we just want something better
And
than
I think
fucking 30th, and then we can talk.
And the cool thing, I think, about a more balanced offense is that will in turn benefit the offensive line. There's no way that relationship does not exist.
Positive feedback loop, right? Like right now, it's a negative feedback loop there, right? So it's like help you, help me, help you, help, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Yeah. And that's what they're not. That's not what they have right now. They have the opposite of that right now. So,
right. So, what made it more difficult for the Seahawks offense to maintain that kind of intended balance was the fact that they were 14-3 down in the first half. They were 31-3 down at one point in the game. That the Bills had the ball for over 38 minutes of play, and the Seahawks the Seahawks defense allowed the Bills offense to have a series success rate of 97th percentile. That's the rate at which a series starting on first down earns a new set of downs or touchdown on that series. They allowed Josh Allen to have 86th percentile EPA per play, which includes an interception. How is that a thing? 91st percentile total EPA per play. The Bills average 93rd percentile EPA per play. Let's do some raw things. Allen was 283 passing yards for 2 touchdowns. The Bills rushed the ball 164 yards on the ground for 4.8 yards per carry average, but that actually includes Trubisky's kneel downs, so it was worse. It was over 5 yards per carry, and it was 167 rushing yards. James Cook had 6.5 yards per carry. Ray Davis, 4.8 yards per carry. Cook, 17 carries, 111 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. The defense was really poor.
So
I don't really know if there's any cope. I guess the cope is Josh Jobe played to allow Devin Witherspoon to slot in at nickel, and he had a nice pick on a outside release slant, which is very hard to cover, particularly with the technique, the step kick technique he was using, and he managed to flip his hips back. Amari Cooper slipped, but he got a pick and almost got a pick six and put the offense in a great position. But the defense for me, Griff, is again, these are kind of issues which have been there the whole time. They just need like a Bo Nix in his first start, Skylar, whatever his name is, or like an actual NFL team, an NFL offense to exploit them and show them this is what you get.
Yeah. The run defense. So what I do know is that they have more than enough talent to be considerably better than this.
Yeah.
And I also believe that I know that Mike Macdonald is a good coach, a good defensive mind. So how do we as a society reconcile those two things with the results? The results are bad. I mean, it probably is sourced to positional coaching and or how Mike as a head coach and no longer DC is delegating roles and communicating things down that trickle down to his subordinates. I think that is probably where they are screwing up during the week. And then also maybe it's how they're coaching the players in game. Coaching guys in the film room and on the practice field is different than in-game coaching. Do they have the right mix of personalities for that? Is it morale management? Is it I don't know, but I think it's something with the staff. And again, like we're a broken record, but we talked about this new staff and all these guys have worked together. You're just opening yourself up to a lot of variance. But like on the field, when we actually watch, it's not necessarily guys getting beat as much as it is guys just not playing things right within a scheme that can at times within a call that can be stressful. But then even when it's supposed to be less stressful, you're still seeing some of those things. So like in too high, what I see when you play in too high ball fitting, you're down a gap, right? You're fitting 8 gaps with 7 defenders or 7 gaps with 6 defenders or 9 with 8, right? All that stuff. What I think I'm seeing right now is when you have to play, even if you're one gapping and not just two gapping, when you have your primary gap and your secondary gap, it seems to me like the defensive lineman, even when he has block control or is maybe stalemating, he's working to his secondary gap when he shouldn't, and then he's working back to his primary, and then you have that screws up the second level. Then the second level doesn't know, wait, where am I fitting? Who am I fitting off of? Should I be in the A gap or the B gap? It'd be one thing if they could play it right. It'd be one thing if they can play it well or not, but it's another thing if they can't read it. You can't play well what you don't read correctly. And I think at too high, that's the issue. So my mind is thinking, how are they being coached? And then in one high, when you're gapped out, so there's 8 gaps, you got 8 defenders, 7 gaps, 7 defenders, etc. You've got 2 issues. One, you've got an alignment issue pre-snap. So guys are out leveraged to their primary responsibility, really their only responsibility, and you're just losing on alignment. When it takes a second level longer to get into their horizontal leverage of where they need to be, that causes problems for the D-line because then those combos and doubles stay on them longer. And what makes something harder for the D-lineman, that makes it harder for the second level. So again, that feedback loop, that's a negative feedback loop. But then even when they are aligned, I have questions about how the second level is being coached with their eye progression, because they are fitting the run as though they have the eyes for a too high run fit. When one high, you look at the ball last, you look at your blocks first, but they're inverting it as you would in too high. They're looking at the running back. So they fall back with the running back into a gap that is already being covered. And then the ball bounces front side again, or
Into
vice versa. And you're out gapping yourself when you're gapped out. Just play your block. The ball comes to you. You don't need to chase the running back. You chase the block. Even if the left guard B gap bubble hauls ass to the sideline, stay front side on that left guard, hauling ass to the sideline, so that the next guy can get into his leverage. And so like it's the coaching. It's some of this is the scheme on paper and it followed Macdonald for Baltimore, but a percentage of it still is how they're communicating it to the players within the scheme relative to the advantages and disadvantages they're in. And I can only think like it's Mike not being able to manage his position coaches. But beyond that, I have no idea.
Not to do a hindsight thing, but to do a kind of the signs were there thing.
By the way, I'm going to cut you off. Sorry, you should always do that, because you should always look to the past, because what was I going to say?
That's literally proof of concept. Like,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
there's issues, those are still going to be issues unless something changes. Football is cyclical because of the part, like because the past is insightful and people learn from it. But
right.
but
Well,
like first,
let new information recontextualize the past, so that you
right,
can then let the
right.
recontextualized past help you project the future better.
So new information, they're playing better rushing offenses and they're having some difficulties and stuff which you've just spoke about, right? Mike Macdonald, like defensively, like run defense wise, he wants his D line to get big time knockback, reset the line of scrimmage, play their block, and shed their block to the ball carrier as he goes through like the line, right? He doesn't want them flying upfield like the 49ers. He's literally spoke about that. How some defenses like get upfield and let the linebackers clean up behind. No, he wants them playing the blocks and then the linebackers behind flowing to the football and often being the dude to make the tackle, hopefully with a D lineman who's got off and shedded to where the ball's going and join the tackle. If you think about the run defense in the first 3 weeks of the season, and I need to get some data on this too, because this is very anecdotal right now. But if you think about how the run defense was making their plays, it was D-line getting penetration and making the tackle for loss in the backfield, which, hey, that's great. We'll take that. When a guy can beat a block and make a crazy good play, be an athlete, that's awesome. But it's not how the whole thing is schemed up. It's not how Macdonald, like in an ideal world, has it envisioned. So then when those sorts of plays start drying up, you get D-line, you don't get the second level doing the stuff still, and then you get problems. I think that's kind of what Griff, you just spoke to. And I think also you get the D-line trying to get back into that mode of, well, hang on, they're not doing it, so then we need to start trying to get penetration and playing in a slightly different mode, or we need to start getting more upfield, as we saw in that Atlanta game. Before they corrected a bit in the second half, played a bit more conservative. And that's the killer. Like, any type of defense you're playing, pass, run, whatever, you require trust of the individual next to you to do his job. That's why it was very effective for Bill Belichick to say, do your job, because especially in run defense, it's not like, say, you're playing cover one and the corner on the opposite side falls over, but the quarterback looks away and you get away with it. In run defense, if you do not play the assignment you are assigned in the kind of, it's like an orchestra almost. You all have to be playing to the same song sheet. Otherwise, someone sounds like crap, and everyone in the audience notices. Like, if one person gets out their gap or decides to play in a slightly different mode, like play more aggressive when everyone else isn't expecting that, it fucks everything up. Not just on that play, but the next time I'm the linebacker next to that guy, I'm like, he's going to fuck me, so I'm going to play slightly differently so I don't get fucked. But then you just fuck the guy next to you. And then he's thinking, well, he fucked him and he fucked him. So what do? Oh, I'll play even more conservatively to clean up for them. And then the poor D lineman who set a great edge expecting you to flow to the football and make the tackle for loss. It's like, where are you? And suddenly, so it's these trust issues that arise, and ultimately there needs to be less fucking.
Yeah.
So
there's a time and a place, Matty, and this isn't the time or the place.
No. And so that's sort of what. And then I wonder what the D-line coaches have to be on the same page as the inside backer coaches. There's all sorts of things going wrong for run defense to be this bad. Some of it is the like schematic structural issues that Macdonald had back half of the second half of last season. But a lot of it is this other stuff. Go
ahead. Sorry.
When Monjombo asked this question, this is overlap Monjombo, I'd say. That when you have bad run, they're kind of doing 1.5 gapping, which but that's not really the problem. Griff, do you have any thoughts?
Like the problem right now?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a little bit. I think we see the 1.5 gapping principles in one high is screwing themselves up.
Right.
But
which
too
isn't
high,
the same as mirror stepping, right?
Right. It's more like you just try to work into the other gap. I mean, it's kind of like 2 gapping from a 1 gapping
Yeah,
technique, which
so
is
Monjombo, you power step into the guy, you lock out, you peek your helmet into the primary gap, but if the ball's going to declare way away from you, or you've clearly seen it go to the gap to your other side, then you can try and shed into the other gap. But it's not, as Griff said, it's more of a one gap technique, and it is termed as 1.5 gapping. And Griff in one high, where they supposedly have the extra man in the box, it's a bit of a problem for them.
yeah. I think, I really think it's what is being emphasized for like when to work into a gap and when not to, relative to what the running back is doing. Because you do that, that's dictated by the running back's path and where the running back, quote unquote, declares. So I think it starts there, but like in too high, for the most part, I mean, if you have block control, that's like 2/3 of the battle. But I do think there's a little bit now, the D line is wanting to be the hero to make the play, so they're working back maybe when they shouldn't. They're playing front side a little too much, being a little too aggressive when they shouldn't. But I really think that the second level is simply just, I mean, Jones's first game with the team, right? Granted, he's played in the scheme, he understands the techniques, but he has to learn the D lineman in front of him and everything. The linebackers simply as a unit are not good and are not giving the scheme what it needs to succeed when fitting the run from too high. And
I thought
my mind goes to how they're being coached and what's being emphasized. But like the one high stuff, the playing primary, secondary when you're gapped out, to me is just so suboptimal, and they have their reasons. But
again, like the offensive line run blocking, like I give benefit of the doubt a bit to the players, because it seems there's so many things which don't seem to add up in a way that implies, poor coaching or poor transferring of the idea to the players, and preparation for like that moment, which Macdonald himself acknowledged after the game in terms of they need to coach better, and he said that way too many times. Now, I actually thought Ernest Jones seemed to play good, but there was so much going on, I've probably missed some horror show plays. But I think the fact that I feel he played good and the run defense was still crap, and the defense is an indication of it. It takes more than one person. Like, you can do your job fine, but if the other guy next to you isn't, it's a problem.
It feels like they are almost lone wolfing or freelancing within the structure of the given play call. They are not on a string with one another at all.
Right.
It's not principled. You got guys in the wrong gap at the wrong time, and they're not fitting off. They're just not playing on a string. They're not playing off one another. You do this, I'll do that. Oh, we're both doing this. Oh, we're both doing that.
So maybe Macdonald's given, and again, this is complete conjecture, but with the reason, maybe Macdonald's given them too much creative freedom within each call, and it's about taking that back a bit from wanting to give them ownership on things.
Maybe, but you'd think, like, he talks about the teaching progression, like just make things simple. Like one high is meant to be simple. Let it be simple.
Mm-hmm.
To what end are you trying to? To what end are you trying to make it complicated? Like, what is that even solving? Like, I don't know. I really think like it might be as simple as, how are they coaching them their keys in the film room? Like, maybe it starts there. What are you looking for? How do you respond to X? How do you respond to Y, as in the keys, the pre-snap indicators? Like, all right, here's an example. And this is the edge. So like that one, I think it was a duo run that kind of sealed, well, the game was already ended, but that after the turnover and that duo run popped out on Job, look how Mafe plays that. You have duo indicators, and Mafe tries to get upfield. And that's a coaching issue in my mind, because a coaching staff has their players understand what the situation is, understands what the formation is, and then from there, what things could occur. You would never play duo like that. You would play the block differently relative to all of those other indicators. And that to me is a sign of a badly coached unit. Like it's just another detail. I think that they are, for reasons we don't completely understand, but it's not a well-coached team.
So Macdonald also acknowledged that play calling wise, he could have done a few more things, and I'm anxious to look back on the tape and see, how much of this was a 2 high defense versus a 1 high, and I understand wanting to be in 2 high structure for, the type of talent Josh Allen is. But it was interesting to me that against Atlanta, we saw, nickel, but like an underfront, a nickel, and a bare front. First time I've seen Macdonald do that for like run D purposes. Did it work? Actually, no. Like they missed some tackles, and the second half run defense was more kind of blitzing into those looks rather than actually lining up in them. But Macdonald afterwards asked about the Bills' usage of heavy personnel, like big time 12 personnel stuff, and he said probably could have had some more front flexibility to have some more answers. Which, I mean, that could include the bear stuff. Maybe some more movements, so we'll look at that. I mean, obviously they're going to look at it because they feel they didn't do a good enough job coaching, and I think we saw the evidence that they didn't. But it's weird to me that they didn't do that. It's just weird to me. So I look forward to that because that seems to be the answer. Like that seems a very obvious thing. It's what, his play calling buckets in Baltimore when they're going through second half of the season run defense struggles didn't change massively, and those are broad buckets, but I didn't notice them doing suddenly way more movement or lining up in a bear look or whatnot. It was the same damn front structure each time and kind of the same style of play each time, and they got gashed, and they're getting gashed now, and so some evolution would be cool, and we saw glimpses of that in Atlanta. Maybe there'll be a bit more on the tape, but in terms of the game broadcast, it seemed very underwhelming.
Yeah. I think the solution is beyond just saying, hey, coach better and play better, institute more, adopt a different philosophy with regard to your run defense altogether, and institute all those movements and be a pressure team that pressures so as to alleviate run defense issues, and then let your sequencing layer off of that. And I think philosophically, Macdonald wants to live in other specialized calls that he wouldn't be able to get to if he were to sequence differently on early downs, because he likes to layer his looks and sequence his looks off each other, and it would require like an entire like foundational pivot. I don't think he wants to make that pivot, but he might have to like save this season. Because right now, if they lose to the Rams, the season is over in terms of probably making the playoffs. At that point, you're looking at a 9-win team tops, and they need to win 10 games to get a wild card, I think.
Yeah, and what's crazy, guys, is like they're 4-4 right now. They're 500. So many teams and franchises have it way worse and have had it way worse than this, and it could get way worse. I think for me, what's like, am I sick? But I find this exciting, is that we're gonna find out so many things, like what players are resilient, what players want to be here, what players are, especially if they lose against the Rams. But like what players are the future, and I guess that brings us to Griff. And I haven't really finished on the defense, but seeing as we're here, would you get more cutthroat with the team, as in there's a vet here, but he's playing okay, maybe substandard? Let's put a young guy in instead. Let's start giving the young guys more opportunities. I'm actually trying to think of spots where they could do that.
Is that a cop-out, though? If the issue is, in terms of optimizing who is on the field, if the issue is really how the players are being coached,
then how are they going to look any better, right? Like, are you just putting them in back? Like, maybe solve the root issue, which we believe to be more coaching than talent.
Right. I mean, ultimately, like with the O-line, we're talking about, could the O-line be better than it is with this group? But the root issue with the O-line really is the talent. But I mean, yeah. So, but I hear what you're saying, though. Like the only names that make a lick of sense would be Tyrese Knight and Christian Haynes, right? Maybe Lau Mea mixing in with Laken Tomlinson, but
Well, you could think like, I mean, I don't think these guys are the issue at all, but you could think, hey, well, let's play Derek Reed over Julian Love. I know he's not even back yet, but that's the only. I think that points out that it doesn't really make sense, and the spots aren't the issues right now. So,
right,
like Love's the best tackler, open field tackler on the team for all of his, okay coverage play. Right. Let's finish up on the defense. So, Narc Diaries, were you at the game? I know you think you go to the game if I remember correctly, but apparently Narc saw Ernest Jones with his arm wrapped up. That would be bad.
He's had an arm thing though, like
he
during
has?
practice. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So defense-wise, Griff, the big topic, like which everyone saw in the building, is raised by Carl, and it says Derek Hall and Jaron Reed fight. Should we read into it? And me personally, I think this is the biggest positive out of the game, which shows how bad a game it was for the Seahawks. But and these are the type of moments that I think it's kind of what I was referencing when we're going to find out a lot about this team. We're going to, Jaron Reed's been an NFL veteran for a while. He's been raised, if you like, by the Legion of Boom. And he knows about kind of Seattle and the culture of those great teams and whatnot. And you have Derek Hall making just a stupid play where, he what actually would have been the situation, but he hits Josh Allen super late in the helmet, head to head, like a dirty play, to be honest with you, on a 3rd and 7 where Allen threw the ball incomplete at Seattle's 24-yard line, and it turns 3 points into 7. And Jaron Reed gets after Hall, and we see, I think, 3, maybe 4 clips of Hall and Reed like animatedly talking, Reed getting in his face, like pointing at to him to use his head and not be stupid, I imagine was part of the phrasing. And Hall kind of going back at him, then Hall on the sideline wanting to go at Reed and getting mad. And then, after all of that, the two of them speaking more calmly as teammates, and Hall after the game saying how they're speaking about how they love each other and saying how Reed's the position group leader and all that good stuff. And I think, reading into it, Carl, I think you should read into it in a positive way. That's exactly what a veteran player should be doing in that situation. And it's exactly what Hall should not do again, obviously. But, Griff, do you disagree?
I mean, I think it's good that they ended on good terms there. The initial reaction was probably just maybe Reed was coming in too hot. Derek Hall got defensive. I mean, I don't know. Those dynamics are between the players. So I was good to see them having a constructive conversation afterward. There's a comment calling for people to be fired and players to be cut after a week 8 game is childish. People don't show up perfect. It's a process. We're not calling for anyone to be fired, and I hope you can parse from this conversation that we're having that we are acknowledging it is very much a process, and we're talking about seeing how Mike, being a first-year head coach, needs to perhaps adapt his process. Obviously, we don't know what the details of that process is.
Where's that?
We're trying to isolate. We are trying to isolate where things are going wrong. So yes, it's a process, and we're giving due respect to that fact, and we're just trying to unpack it all.
We're processing the process. We're processing the process.
So I would say we are actually doing what you want us to do. You just don't like the processing, the conclusions that we're making. But anyway, yeah. So.
Oh, can I also just say, like, if we're just dealing with what other people have may or may not said, like, Devin Witherspoon's absolutely fine. He's just not being blitzed and involved in the run fit in a way that shows up as impactful on a broadcast copy through the choice of his play caller. But he's absolutely fine. He's still being blitzed a bit. He's a very talented, good player, and he's making some very good unseen plays, often which the ball doesn't even get thrown that way because they're good zone defense plays. Leonard Williams is the best player on the Seahawks defense, and to criticize him for run defense failings is just a complete misunderstanding.
I mean, if we're gonna
football.
even if he and Witherspoon have a bad play here and there, if we're gonna start coming for Leonard Williams,
We should come for everyone.
Then what are we doing here? Like, you have to rally around someone as like you can hang your hat on. Otherwise, like if you're talking about being disgruntled with them, then like this picture has no chance. So
anyway, right. Do we have anything else, chat? I'm reading through your comments. Ben Casperson, I know I missed your I got your question from the tape show on Thursday, but then I forgot everything because I needed to go to the toilet after the show, if you must know. I needed a wee. I'm a human, okay? But
no, you're not. You're a football coach.
They don't pee. They just pee in their pants while coaching. Yeah. But Ben also asked about the multiplying effect of Ernest Jones, and in the previous episode, Griff, he also asked about, is there a player on the defense who they could double the snap count of, like Macdonald did with Carl Hamilton. I guess he tried it with Job today, though I don't think that's. I think Trey Brown will probably be slotting back into left corner or field corner when Spoon's in the slot.
I think the snowball effect will be Ernest Jones settling in with the new team, and whatever Macdonald has to do to fix the run defense, and like it starts there.
Fair.
I don't, because the collective talent in the back seven isn't enough to be so good in pass defense, even at your ceiling, to overcome this run defense. Like Baltimore could. They had the talent in the back seven to manufacture a pass defense that could accommodate bad run defense, because that's what they did, especially the second half of last year. Seattle can't do that, so it needs to be complementary. And they have that thing, though, is that they have the talent to stuff the run. That's you could issue, so.
You could say you could double the snap count of whoever the third interior D lineman is and play bear.
Yeah, I mean, play bear and slant the line toward the bubble, and then run fire zones and creepers to kind of like sling the fits to get the right fitters in and the right fitters out. To match.
Do the cool jargon words, and that'll work.
Yeah.
Just not the cool jargon words like sim creeper on first and second down. Not that they're doing.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
Funny.
But right. The next week, dude, will be like the defining game of the season, because at that point, season is probably. I mean, a lot hinges on this Rams game. So whatever.
I'm frustrated that on that duo run, like, it's just like the 49ers game, really. Like, everyone knew they were going to run the ball and they still couldn't stop the run. Like, yeah. Oh well. Anything else, Griff? Like, Tom Brady was kind of wilding out.
Tom, I wonder.
Said a problematic comment, and then I think maybe he was enjoying the hospitality at Newman Field.
I think Tom was a little sauced up because he was saying,
allegedly.
Also, like I don't clutch my pearls at all at someone saying hell, but like a color commentator typically doesn't just say.
He said
hells.
Pissed.
He said pissed as well.
Yeah,
and like
I'm pissed off.
He said pissed off, and then he also said like, what the hell are we doing? Like comically, like comedically. But I don't think that is decorum that producers want from their color guy.
Oh, what are they gonna do? Fire him?
Do you think that they're going to drop a note or like have a conversation? Like I think
the only thing would be the ableist slur, like that probably gets a note, and maybe it doesn't because he gets paid so much money, he can do what he wants. It's not as big a deal in America, right? Or maybe it is.
It is among like the disabled community, but like, writ large, it's not as stigmatized as of a
it's
word.
just like a lack of empathy,
as it should be. It should be more stigmatized, but it's not in America as it is compared to the UK. It's kind of like the C word in America, like that is a crude word.
That was a hot mic picked that up today.
I know.
Did you hear the hot mic on Devin Witherspoon as well? Like when they're getting blown the hell out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Right.
Matty, did you say hell? Watch your mouth.
It's where I'm going. Okay, Fats, thank you for the donations again. A black cherry white claw. I've got more receipts. Okay. Well, let's all stay friends. Let's all be nice. Let's be nice. And how's that Kilcoman treating you? Well, right now, Fats, I've drunk a Guinness, and the Kilcoman is to come. So I look forward to that. No free ads. But Diageo, if you ever want to get involved with the pod, I'll be down. You've got enough money. Is there any hope for this team? Asked Ben Judge. We put what now as a thumbnail, we as a collective.
I mean, scrape at wins and, one game at a time, squeak into the wild card and see if Gino can win a shootout. I mean, that's the pitch for this team right now. And that might be lofty even at this point, but that's still the pitch.
I think what's really frustrating for me is like their run defense collapsed last year, but it did start good, but it collapsed last year. The year before it was crap. And then they weren't really able to run the ball effectively the last 2-3 years. Like their run game has been poor on offense. So it's like the same issues each time. So then that's kind of a contradiction of, well, if you've changed the entire coaching staff and they can't still work it out, then it has to be the talent. But then they've also changed the offensive line completely. There's so many moving parts in the NFL year to year.
Right.
I think I'm comfortable with our assessment, but it is definitely frustrating, and it's definitely not as cut and dry as fix this and they'll fix this, which makes it all more difficult for the first time head coach. Finally, Axel, thank you for another donation, Axel. I'd like to err on the organization. I'd like to think the organization is aware of issues more than anyone. I understand your concerns and they sound reasonable. What do you think the people inside the org are thinking? Well, it depends who you ask, Axel. Right, but exactly. if you're thinking Vulcan ownership group, they're thinking we're very disappointed.
Yeah.
We want to make the playoffs. We want to make money and have playoff games. We want to sell jerseys, and the team price is not looking good right now. This was supposed to fix things and make us a playoff team. That's what we were told. And I would be fascinated if, at what point, Griff, obviously Mike Macdonald has, I think he's probably fine. What point is John Schneider, getting a bit hot?
Well, it becomes a matter of who's left to fire. So, because ownership...
So you fire it, you probably fire a coordinator.
So all ownership can do is hire and fire people. That's the only way they know how to wield their power. So they say, okay, we kind of maybe possibly made Pete fire one of his DCs after 2021, and then we fired Pete, and so they're gone. So we brought in everyone new. So the only one left to fire that we haven't fired is now the GM. Also, we have to remember they switched out cap guys, like one of the high-ranking front office management people. Also mysteriously left the team and they hired a new one. And was that a soft firing? And who knows why? But was that we needed a shake-up thing coming from the top and say pick somebody? Who knows, man? Who knows? But that did happen. So management's like, okay, or ownership's like, we even already had changes within the management structure. So who do we fire now? I don't know. If the season ends in a disaster, they might say, all right, we just want a fresh start for the hell of it. And that might mean firing John and getting in a new guy that Mike likes.
I'd be shocked at this point, Axel. And again, I don't want to scapegoat, but it's literally what happens. But I'd be shocked if Ryan Grubb returns. But it's way too early to say that. But if this were to continue on this current trajectory, that's like the obvious move, right? But
So
it'd be a massive shame.
if say they end the season as the 17th ranked offense, do you think Grubb gets fired outright? Or do you think they'd say, you know what,
Depends on the
let's give you another
circumstances.
year?
Like, what if all of their production's kind of how it's been for this year, where they're just like not running the ball effectively, and it's like garbage time yards.
Right.
Like, what happens if you remove like 20%? You know, do the win percentage filter on the offense? Where are they in EPA then? Get it up. Get it up. Fiddle with your sliders. Chat, if you have any more questions or you want to give us more money, which is very kind, don't feel obliged to do the money thing.
Absolutely do not
on the questions, feel obliged. Get questions in.
All right. If so, with the win percentage being between 20 and 80%,
yeah,
their offensive EPA falls to 22nd.
Yeah, so he's getting fired.
Yikes.
We should be.
They're going to play some bad defenses coming up.
Right.
But the Rams, the Cardinals.
Oh my God! Someone stole my tweet.
Who? When?
Chat. What do we think about this? Hold on. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. That's weird. Okay. I'm not weird. Oh, Fats. That's very kind, Fats. Imagine if Dan Quinn goes on a deep playoff run and does to the Commanders what Pete did to Seattle. So I think Dan Quinn's an interesting topic, which brings us kind of full circle to what we were talking about earlier. But I've watched Dan Quinn do a coaching clinic literally on like organizational philosophy, what he learned from, his time as head coach in Atlanta, and when he was Dallas DC. You look at how he had that Dallas defense playing. It was all this offseason talk about how Mike Zimmer would come in and make them like more aggressive and blitz more and stuff. It's like all absolute nonsense. Like, have you actually watched what he's doing with Dallas? Like, he's got terrible DBs, awful linebackers, particularly with the injuries, and he's somehow making it work to a point that they're like turning the ball over, getting takeaways, they're all flying to the football. He's deploying Parsons in a very clever way to get the most out of his skill set. Obviously, he's a great player, but like, look at him now compared to Dan Quinn stuff. And culturally, it's clear there's something going on. And you watch the clinic, and he's thought so much about that side of it. And Macdonald just being young and, not actually having coached that long either, and not been around two different systems. Like, Quinn's been around a lot of different guys, and also Pete. The Harbors are fairly similar, I think. There's more to being a head coach, and way more to being a head coach and calling good defense. And Dan Quinn did call good defense too, but that's why the Macdonald hire was so ambitious, and we loved it because on paper, like, he's the most exciting hotshot coach, and we love some of what he did defensively in Baltimore, but that's not a head coach in terms of that. That's a very small fraction of it. So Macdonald, in a way, is learning on the job, as he himself admitted. So, yeah, that could happen with Dan Quinn. I hope it does. It'd be cool.
I agree with Cream de la Pants. Ultimately, we need to see the whole season play out. Creme. Pardon me. Ultimately, we need more than 8 games.
Yeah.
But I think we are engaging with the question under the premise if it sustains at this pace, right? So, like, this
and
pace
we've
is
also
not
seen,
acceptable,
like,
but the pace can change, though.
It sounds stupid, but we've also seen, like, a big enough sample to understand what this team is, and the weaknesses are consistent each game. The strengths are fairly consistent each game. Yeah,
that's true.
And
it's not like they're all over the map. It's not like, oh, they were good at this, and then they're bad at this, but then they were bad at that. Now they're good at this. It's been very consistent, just multiplied by the team that they're playing.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Oh my God, what is Dak Prescott doing?
I don't know, man. I guess he's having a rough season, or the Cowboys are failing him. I don't know.
Well, sprint out is kind of gross in that position, but that was so poor. Okay.
Matty, are you going to watch Children of Men?
No.
Someone suggested if you watch it, it could be like a spark.
That was Dan Chu, friend of the pod.
Yeah, Dan. As Dan Chu said, maybe it will serve as like a superstitious motivator. I don't know.
You know what is cool, Griff?
What if they trade for Brandon Sheriff?
Why would he be traded?
Because the Jags are giving up.
Are they?
Yeah.
Did they lose today?
Excuse me. I don't know, actually. Did they?
Chat, did the Jags lose today?
They did lose 30-27.
They should trade for him. Is he good?
What if they try to trade for Trevor?
I don't know, man. They might just need to, at some point, just say, look, it's bad. Chat, what do you think of this? I like this. Look at this.
Do we like it though?
I do.
I don't know. I don't know if we like it. I don't know if we like it.
I don't even know what. I know Monjombo is very kind.
No, I get it.
Oh my gosh.
This is so.
Whoa. There's a whole ass explanation. Did you see Monjombo's cooking?
Yeah, dude, Mujambo is quite the culinary mind.
Bloody chef.
Yeah.
Delicious. Person M. Do you think Person M's me? I think it might be. Oh, you're A. Okay, maybe not. What is this?
Remature, that's great. Love it.
But the point is, if you wanna, yeah, cool.
All right. So, Matty, you'll watch Children.
Oh god, I'm gonna get cancelled for illegally live streaming. Luckily, it blocks it.
So you'll watch Children of Men, and then we'll reconvene and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Also, on kind of, I guess, on a related note, even though I haven't seen it, things can get worse. I've said it before, said it on the pod, but things can get worse. They might get worse.
Yeah. So, Matty, you didn't get the Aubrey Maturin references, did you?
No, I did a bit.
You should have, because you've seen that movie.
Yeah, I did a bit.
Stephen Maturin and Captain Jack Aubrey.
Yeah. But I never read the novels.
That's fine.
I'm not failing the quiz, Monjombo. I'm not. I get it. I get the popular culture reference. I am cool.
Hit it, Matty. Let's get out of here.
Well, we'll be back
Matty.
on Thursday with a tape review, autopsy. Griff, this is the most quiet your dogs have been. Are they giving up hope?
Maybe. Well, I only have one of them in here, so they don't have the other one to rile themselves up.
Just remember, bad times don't last. Tough dogs do.
There you go.